They say love is blind, but what if a man pretends to be blind, just to finally see the truth? This is the story of a billionaire who faked his blindness, and what he heard in the dark changed his life forever. Colonel Adewale had everything a man could dream of. A 12-bedroom mansion touching the ocean, luxury cars parked like trophies in his driveway, a private jet with his name embroidered on the seats, and a wife who looked like she stepped out of a magazine cover. That wife, Vanessa, was his weakness. Because despite having money, power, and fame, one thing haunted him every night: what if she didn't love him, but only loved the life he gave her? Some men fear death. But Colonel feared fake love. Whenever he looked into Vanessa's eyes, he wondered if she was looking back at him. Or at his bank account. One night, standing alone by his bedroom window overlooking the city lights, he whispered, "If I lost everything today, would she still hold my hand?" But deep down, he already knew the answer. In the mansion worked a maid named Amara. Unlike everyone else, she was quiet, humble, unnoticed by most, but not by Colonel. She didn't act like a servant. She acted like someone who genuinely cared about the people around her. She cooked with heart, cleaned with pride, remembered workers' birthdays, bought medicine for staff who were sick, and never once complained about her life. But nobody knew that Amara was working only to help her younger brother finish school. She had dreams of becoming a nurse someday, but life forced her into cleaning rich people's floors. Yet she never looked bitter. In fact, her presence brought peace into the house. Colonel admired her kindness. But that admiration would soon grow stronger during the darkest chapter of his life. Because as Amara quietly cared, Vanessa slowly changed. She didn't laugh with him like before. She didn't touch him. She started hiding her phone. She began going out late, wearing new perfume, new dresses, and showing new behaviors. Her smiles were short. Her hugs were cold. And every time he walked into a room, her phone would flip face down. Love doesn't need proof to feel pain. It just feels it. One evening, after a charity event in their mansion, Colonel heard Vanessa whispering on the phone. She thought he was far away, but he was right behind the hallway. She said, "He's boring now. I need someone who makes me feel alive. I'll call you tomorrow night, same place." Those words were daggers. Not because they were loud, but because they were true. That night, Colonel didn't sleep. His heart felt heavy, but also awake. For years, he feared this moment. But instead of destroying him, it gave him clarity. He remembered his father's words. Light shows the world, but darkness reveals the heart. And right there, Colonel made a decision that changed everything. He would pretend to be blind. It wasn't madness. It was strategy. He wanted to see who would stand beside him when he could give nothing back. And he wanted to hear what people say, when they think he can't see. So the next morning, he returned home with dark glasses, walking slowly with a cane. He announced to everyone that due to an illness, he had lost his eyesight. Vanessa cried loudly in front of everyone, hugging him, touching his face, calling him "my love," acting like the perfect wife. But Colonel felt it. She was performing. And pain has a strange way of detecting lies. But Amara cried quietly. She rushed to help him walk. She cooked for him, read books to him, guided him down the stairs, and prayed for him every night when she thought nobody could hear. One night she whispered, "God, even if he never sees again, please give him peace." And in that moment, Colonel felt something unusual. Something unusual called respect. He was a billionaire, but he suddenly felt protected by a maid. Days passed. Vanessa stopped pretending. She went out more frequently. She stopped caring for him. And one night, Colonel heard footsteps. But not just hers. A man was with her. And they entered the guest room. The house he built, the house Amara cared for, was now being used to destroy his heart. Colonel was shaking. But he stayed silent. He needed proof. So the next morning, he secretly installed hidden cameras across the mansion, disguised as decorations. Within a few days, the truth was worse than he expected. She brought different men. She used his money to entertain them. And she even told one of them, "When he dies, all this will be ours." But then the story changed direction again. Because during all of this, Amara never left his side. She encouraged him, defended his honor behind his back, prayed for him. And when he couldn't sleep at night, she said something that stayed in his heart forever. "Sir, some storms don't come to destroy you. They come to clear the path ahead." He didn't reply, but a tear rolled down his cheek. Not from pain, but because he found something rare. A heart that cared when nobody was watching. And that's when Cunnel, who pretended to be blind, finally saw what his eyes had failed to see. Sometimes, the one meant for you is standing quietly in the background, waiting for your storm to end. Confrontation, suspense, police, and the moment he says, "I was blind, but now I see." They thought he couldn't see. They thought he couldn't hear. But blindness doesn't stop the truth. Sometimes, darkness makes the heart hear what the eyes never could. Colonel Adewale sat silently in his study every night, pretending to be asleep. Behind his dark glasses, tears would fill his eyes, not because his vision was gone, but because he could still see memories of Vanessa before she changed. There was a time she looked at him like he was her world, when she held his hand during storms. But now, she no longer looked at him like a man. She looked at him like a burden. And the worst part was, she didn't even hide it anymore. Some nights, she returned home at 2 a.m. reeking of perfume that wasn't hers, and laughter that wasn't his. Once, he heard the door slam and her heels echoing through the hallway. He waited for her to check on him, but she went straight to her room without saying a word. Even his blindness no longer entertained her. Money was no longer enough for her. Stability was no longer enough for her. She wanted excitement, attention, and wild nights that left no guilt behind. But guilt always returns. And the recording cameras never stopped. Every night Cunnel checked the footage. And every time he did, a piece of his heart vanished forever. What destroyed him wasn't just the cheating, it was how carelessly she laughed with her lovers. Loud, shameless, confident. As if she truly believed that he, the wise, observant, billionaire, was just a blind fool. But pain doesn't break great men. It fuels them. One morning, as he pretended to struggle with his cane, he heard Amara say gently, "Sir, slow down. The stairs are wet." Vanessa watched them from across the hallway. Her eyes were cold. Jealousy lived inside them, and even Cunnel felt it. Vanessa asked coldly, "Amara, do you always have to baby him like this? He's blind, not dead." Cunnel felt something new inside him. He wasn't sure if it was rage, or relief. Because finally, the true Vanessa was coming out. Amara lowered her head respectfully and replied, "I only serve with the heart God gave me, Ma." Vanessa scoffed and walked away. No empathy. No warmth. No remorse. Cunnel held his breath. Because for the first time in months, he felt protected by someone other than himself. That day, after breakfast, Cunnel asked Amara to sit. She hesitated. Maids were not allowed to sit at the dining table. But Cunnel insisted. She slowly sat down. "Sir, is everything okay?" she asked softly. He paused. Then said the words that had been living in his chest for years. "I don't know who truly loves me anymore." And for the first time, his voice broke. Amara looked at him, seeing the sadness behind his glasses. She wanted to comfort him, but respect chained her words. So she said the only thing her heart could form. "Sir, a true heart never hides. It may be quiet, but it never hides." Cunnel didn't reply, but his silence said more than words ever could. That night, Vanessa entered the mansion again, but this time, she didn't even sneak. She didn't care anymore. She opened a wine bottle and drank with her newest lover in the living room. They laughed so loudly that even the security guard removed his earpiece because it was too much. And worst of all, they played loud music. In the house of the man who fed her, raised her status, gave her his surname. Connell didn't watch through cameras anymore. He didn't need to. He could hear everything. And every laugh they shared in that room, was another nail in the coffin of his heart. But while she partied, someone else prayed. Amara, in her tiny room downstairs, kneeled and begged for his healing. She prayed for his sight to return, not knowing that it already had. She prayed for his peace. Not knowing that his storms were finally clearing, she prayed for light. Not knowing that God was already moving. The next morning, Connell called his doctor. One last meeting, one final medical checkup, but something else happened behind the scenes. When Amal was cleaning his study, she saw something. A file, slightly open on his desk. She didn't intend to read it, but her eyes caught one line. Subject, blindness experiment, phase 2 begins. Her hands froze. Her heart stopped. Phase 2, that meant Sir Connell was never blind. Her eyes widened. She stepped back slowly, shaken, confused. Was he testing them all along? Was everything a lie? She backed away, but accidentally knocked over a frame. The sound echoed. Connell rushed in, his cane tapping the floor strategically. "Who's there?" he acted. She hesitated. Then said, "It's me, sir." Amara. Connell stepped closer, and then realized, her breathing was different, shaky, nervous. Unlike every other day. Before he could speak, Amara whispered, "Sir, the file on your desk, you were never blind." Silence filled the room. His heartbeat slowed. Now, he had two options, confess, or continue the game. But for the first time, he felt fear. Not of exposure, but of losing the last person who cared. Connell removed his glasses, looked directly at her. No more pretending. And spoke the words he had hidden from the world. "I once was blind, but not with my eyes. I was blinded by love." Amara gasped softly. He continued. "Vanessa slipped away from me long ago. And I needed to know, if anyone still cared when money couldn't see, when power couldn't speak, and when love truly had to listen." And at that moment, Amara didn't see him as a billionaire. She saw him, as a man. Broken. But trying. She slowly whispered, "And in the darkness, what did you find?" Connell looked at her with eyes that were no longer afraid. "I found you," he said. A silence followed. A precious one. The kind that doesn't need words, just presence. Just humanity. But peace was fragile. And it didn't last long. Because that very night, Vanessa made her biggest mistake yet. She brought 3 men to the house. Not 1. 3. They drank. They laughed. They mocked him. One of them even insulted his blindness, loudly. "Look at that blind billionaire sleeping upstairs. If he knew how to enjoy life, he'd still see." Vanessa laughed, and then said something poisonous. "If he dies, this house will be mine. And maybe one of yours too." They are now sitting in the man's living room, plotting his death, while eating his food. But the cameras heard everything. The microphones caught everything. And Connell watched everything. This was no longer betrayal. It was war. The next morning, Connell made calls. 2 lawyers. 4 officers. 1 journalist. And his personal pastor. They were all invited to the mansion for a prayer gathering for my healing. Vanessa smiled when she heard the news. She thought it was a funeral rehearsal. Finally, her time to own everything had arrived. She invited her friends too. She wore expensive perfume. Picked her finest dress. Fixed her makeup. She thought that day would be her victory. But destiny had a different script. Everyone arrived. Cameras live. Lawyers seated. Pastor ready. TV reporter waiting. Vanessa was excited beyond measure. She held Connell's arm and whispered, "This is the beginning of your miracle, my love." He smiled. She didn't know that the miracle would remove her from his life forever. Connell rose, removed his dark glasses, and Vanessa froze. His eyes were open, clear, focused, alive. The entire room gasped. One cameraman dropped his device, and Connell looked at her, not with weakness, but with the strength of a man who had seen everything. "Vanessa," he said loudly, "I told the world I was blind, but you are the one who lost sight of love." She stepped back. Panic washed over her. "Wait. I can explain." But before she could lie again, every screen in the room turned on. The recordings played. Every touch, every kiss, every laugh, every betrayal. Vanessa fell to her knees instantly. "No. No, turn it off. Please. Connell, please." But the world had already seen. And the world does not unsee. Lawyers rose to declare immediate divorce. Officers stood to arrest the men. The journalist began recording a nationwide exclusive. Everything started collapsing in seconds. And in the middle of the chaos, Connell calmly whispered, "I pretended to be blind. But you were the one who refused to see." That night, Vanessa was escorted out of the mansion. Handcuffed, crying, begging for mercy. But mercy had left that house long ago. Amara watched from the hallway, tears in her eyes, not from joy, but relief. Truth had finally arrived. Pain had an ending. Peace had an entrance. Connell approached her, removed the last camera hidden in his cane, and said gently, "In the darkest days of my life, when everyone wanted my wealth, you were the only one who wanted my peace." She closed her eyes. One tear fell. And for the first time, he held her hand without fear. The world had seen his blindness. But for the first time, he truly saw his future. They thought the story was over. They thought the betrayal had ended. But love, the kind that is real, doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't beg. It doesn't hide. It waits patiently, even when the world is crumbling around it. Connell Adewale sat in his grand study, the mansion quiet except for the distant sounds of city traffic. He had survived betrayal, deceit, and heartbreak. Vanessa, the woman he once believed would be his life, had been exposed for the world to see. The recordings, the proofs, the confessions, they all played like a cruel symphony of what had been taken from him. And yet, Connell felt lighter than he had in years. He had seen the darkness of people's hearts. He had been betrayed by the one he trusted most. And yet, in the quiet moments, he felt something else, something stronger than pain. Amara. The maid. The quiet woman who had never demanded anything, never asked for recognition, who had spent her days caring for him with sincerity and humility. She had been there when his world started to crumble, when the betrayal cut deepest. She had prayed for him. She had protected him when no one else would. She had been his eyes, his voice, his strength, when he had pretended to be blind. And now, it was time to reward that loyalty. Connell had planned the evening meticulously. Every detail was chosen with care. He wanted this to be perfect, not extravagant, not flashy, but genuine. Something that reflected the simplicity and honesty of the woman who had stood by him in darkness. He found Amara in the kitchen, quietly cleaning after the chaos of the morning. She was exhausted, her eyes still red from tears, yet she smiled politely when she saw him. "Sir," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly, "are you okay? Do you need anything?" Connell shook his head. "No. I'm fine. Better than fine." He stepped closer, removed his glasses, and for the first time in weeks, she saw his full expression, calm, confident, but softened by emotion. Amara's heart skipped a beat. She had grown used to seeing him in shadows, watching his gestures, hearing his voice, but now, seeing his eyes clear and open, she realized just how deeply she had cared for him without ever admitting it. Connell reached for her hand. She froze, expecting instructions, or perhaps scolding, but there was none. Only a gaze full of gratitude, respect, and something more. Amara, he said softly, do you remember when I first returned from my trip, and I pretended to be blind? She nodded. Yes, sir, I remember. I prayed for you every night. And you were always there, Connell continued. Through it all. While everyone else pretended to care, or tried to take from me, you were the one who never wavered. You never left my side. You never questioned me. You just stayed. Amara swallowed hard. I only did what felt right, sir. I didn't want to see you hurt. Connell smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried years of sorrow and relief in the same moment. And because of that, I want to ask you something. Something I've never asked anyone in my life. Amara's eyes widened. Her hands trembled slightly. Sir. He dropped to one knee. The marble floor beneath him felt colder than any night in the mansion, but he barely noticed. Amara, will you marry me? Her breath caught. She tried to speak, but words failed her. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The woman who had quietly loved and served him now realized that the love she had given unselfishly was finally seen. Yes, she whispered, voice breaking. Yes, sir. I will. Connell rose and embraced her. The mansion felt alive in that moment, not with wealth or luxury, but with truth, sincerity, and the kind of love that doesn't falter. The news spread quickly. By the next day, headlines screamed. Billionaire exposes cheating wife, marries loyal maid. Blind test of love, how Connell Adewale found true happiness. But Connell didn't care about the media. He didn't care about fame, fortune, or even public opinion. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Vanessa, on the other hand, was a cautionary tale. She had begged, pleaded, and tried to explain herself, but it was too late. The recordings were public. The betrayal undeniable. She had lost everything, the mansion, the lifestyle, and most importantly, the man she had once deceived. Connell's lawyers handled the divorce quietly, ensuring there was no messy public confrontation beyond what was already exposed. Vanessa left, humiliated, her power stripped away, and Connell never looked back. Life moved differently for Connell now. He and Amara were married in a private ceremony. The mansion, once a stage for deceit and betrayal, became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and genuine love. He kept some of his routines, but his priorities changed. Board meetings were still important, investments were still important, but nothing mattered more than the woman who had stood beside him when the world had turned away. Amara moved from being a maid to being his partner in life. She didn't care about the wealth or status, she cared about love. She cared about the man behind the billionaire mask. And in return, Connell gave her everything he could, not just material wealth, but respect, trust, and a lifetime of devotion. Evenings in the mansion were different now. They would sit together by the balcony overlooking Lagos. Sometimes they would talk about their past, the betrayals, the lies, the pain. Other times, they would sit in silence, enjoying each other's presence. Connell would hold her hand, and she would rest her head on his shoulder, both realizing that the greatest luxury wasn't money, or cars, or power, it was trust, loyalty, and true love. And sometimes, Connell would whisper, I once needed to be blind, to finally see. Amara would smile, a tear escaping her eye, and reply softly. And I needed to stay, to finally be seen. Months later, Connell received a call from one of his business partners. The topic was serious, a merger, a new investment. But he was distracted. His mind wandered to Amara preparing breakfast, humming softly, unaware that her love had saved him in ways he couldn't put into words. In that moment, he realized something profound. Money could be lost. Power could fade. Friends could betray. But love, genuine love, never falters. It is patient, silent, and unwavering. And when found, it heals wounds that no fortune could ever touch. Connell decided to do something he had never done before. He invited Amara to visit his favorite beach, not as a maid, not as a partner in his house, but as the woman who had saved his life. They walked hand in hand, barefoot in the sand, watching the sun dip into the horizon. She looked at him, eyes shining. "Sir, I never imagined this. I never thought." He cut her off gently. "You thought I'd never see. But I did. And now, I never want to stop seeing you." She laughed softly. "Even if I made mistakes?" "You never did," he said. "You only gave what was real." The waves crashed. The sky blazed orange and pink. The air smelled of salt and freedom. And in that moment, Colonel Adewale realized that the true wealth he had spent his life seeking, had been standing quietly beside him all along. In the months that followed, their life became a story for everyone who had ever been betrayed, doubted, or abandoned. Colonel and Amara's story circulated in newspapers, social media, and even late-night talk shows. It was a story about loyalty, patience, and the power of genuine love. People were inspired. Some cried. Others reflected on their own relationships. And most importantly, Colonel didn't care about the world anymore, because he had found the one person who mattered. The mansion was no longer a palace of lies. It was a home. The walls no longer echoed with betrayal, but with laughter, love, and whispers of devotion. Colonel often remembered the night he had decided to pretend to be blind. He had acted out of doubt, out of fear, but that decision had revealed the truth. Sometimes, he would tell Amara, "I had to close my eyes, to finally see who was real." And she would smile, resting her head on his chest, knowing that love had been patiently waiting for them both. Years later, they had children. They raised them with lessons Colonel had learned the hard way. Honesty mattered more than wealth. Loyalty mattered more than power. And love, true love, was priceless. Colonel would sometimes look back at the house of betrayal, remembering the woman who had once been everything to him and yet nothing. But he never felt regret. Instead, he felt gratitude. Gratitude for Amara. Gratitude for truth. Gratitude for the storm that revealed the light. And when people asked him, "How did you find happiness after everything?" he would smile quietly and say, "I stopped searching in the wrong places, and finally saw what was always right in front of me." And so, the billionaire who had pretended to be blind, finally saw clearly. He saw love. He saw loyalty. He saw the future. And it was beautiful.